Hello, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We're going to get started in a moment or two. I see a few more people logging in, and I want to give everyone a chance to join. Thank you. Hello, everyone. Marion Square Forest Management and Caresoft Technology would like to welcome you to our webinar, The Next Phase of Federal AI, where agencies are investing and how vendors should prepare. Before we get started, I would like to go over a few quick logistics. The audio portion of this webinar can be heard through your computer speakers, or you may join with your phone. Please note all lines have been muted to reduce background noise. We encourage you to ask questions throughout the session using the Q&A function located on the toolbar at the bottom of your screen. We'll be doing our best to address all questions. Our contact information will also be available at the end of the presentation for any additional questions you may have. Today's webinar is being recorded, and a copy of the recording will be emailed to you once we send out the follow-up. To tell you a little bit about Caresoft, we are the trusted government IT solutions provider supporting federal, state, local government, education, healthcare, and private sector industries. We connect our customers across the US and Canada with thousands of technology vendors, resellers, system integrators, and managed service providers to deliver a comprehensive range of solutions and services to meet organizations' needs. Caresoft, in conjunction with our vendor partners, is pleased to host and sponsor thousands of educational and informational events each year, ranging from webinars like today's to accredited trainings, trade shows, roundtable discussions, technology forums, users groups, and more. Caresoft holds a wide variety of schedules, contracts, and purchasing agreements that streamline and simplify the IT procurement process. As the master government aggregator for our vendor, reseller, and integrator partners, Caresoft has assembled a comprehensive IT solutions portfolio that includes products and services across multiple technology verticals to support organizations with mission-focused solutions for artificial intelligence, cybersecurity, DevSecOps, multi-cloud, customer experience, emerging technology, FedRAMP, 5G, and more. At this time, it is my pleasure to welcome Harvey Morrison to introduce today's speakers.
Hey, thanks very much, Sydney. Appreciate the time and everybody joining us today. Abby, if we could go to the first slide there, that'd be awesome. Thank you. So good afternoon, everyone. Again, thank you for joining us. My name is Harvey Morrison. I'm one of the co-founders and the CEO here at Marion Square. Over the last several years, we've watched artificial intelligence move from an emerging technology discussion into really a strategic priority across the government. Initially, much of the conversation focused on understanding the technology itself, what AI could do, where it might fit within government, and how federal agencies should think about governance, risk, and oversight. Today, the conversation, I would say, is very different. We're seeing growing funding of AI initiatives. Agencies are identifying mission areas where AI can improve outcomes. And increasingly, we're seeing AI move beyond experimentation into operational environments. However, at the same time, not every agency is moving at the same pace, and not every use case, as we're finding, is receiving funding. And that's really the focus of the discussion today. Our objective is not to talk about AI in the abstract. It's to examine the signals that help us understand where federal adoption is heading, where agencies are investing, what mission challenges they're trying to solve, and what those trends mean for technology companies looking to grow their federal business. As we go through this session, we're going to look at several indicators, including trends from the federal AI use case inventory, emerging priorities reflected in agency budget requests, the growing role for AI across both national security and civilian missions, and the factors that can help vendors identify where meaningful opportunities are beginning to emerge. One of the constant themes you're going to hear throughout the discussion today is that the federal AI market is not a single market. Different agencies are pursuing AI for different reasons. Different missions are moving at different speeds. And understanding those differences is becoming increasingly important for companies looking to align their solutions with government demand. So, to help us explore these trends, I'm really excited to be joined by our panelists today, who I think you're going to see bring a great deal of experience in helping organizations navigate that intersection of technology, mission priorities, and federal adoption. So why don't I take just a minute here and I'll let our two panelists introduce themselves. Next slide, please, Abby. Why don't you go ahead, John?
Yeah, I'd love to. So if Abby, you can go to the next slide, I believe. First of all, thanks for having us here, Harvey. Really appreciate it.
Yeah,
There we go. That's the slide. Excited about the conversation today to talk about this blazing hot topic of AI and how it's interfacing with the federal as well as across the globe. So with Force Management, we work with SaaS and software companies across the globe, organizations that sell into complex markets, including the federal government. We help revenue teams move beyond just feature-based selling and translate what their solutions are into the outcomes the buyers are actually that they actually care about. That would mean mission effectiveness, operational efficiency, risk reduction, modernization, things like that. And in the federal market, while great technology is not enough, sellers need to be able to align their capabilities with agency priorities and mandates and the measurable impact that the program leader or executive sponsors are trying to achieve. The work that we do is very practical and extremely tailored to each organization we work with. We help these teams align on consistent messaging, articulate their differentiation in ways that matter to government buyers as well as commercial buyers, while preserving value through procurement and improve adoption so methodology shows the real opportunities. Our goal is not just to be better, to have better sales conversations, is to help teams win more in the right of the contracts that they're chasing, having higher value and building stronger long-term customer relationships. And that's what we focus on at Force Management. Harvey, back to you.
Oh, awesome. Hey, thanks a lot, John. Caitlin, why don't you let you go next, please?
Yeah, absolutely. So, hi everyone. I'm Caitlin Lewis. I'm the director of market research at Caresoft. I lead a team focused on helping our sales organizations, our technology partners, and our customers just better understand the government market through our research, procurement intelligence, and market strategy. And my team is supporting over 4,000 different technology vendors every single day across federal, state, local, education, and all the different kind of healthcare markets too. And we really spend our time analyzing what's going on with the government priorities, all those acquisition trends that we're seeing, emerging technologies like AI, and policy changes and challenges, to help translate what's happening across government into really actionable kind of go-to-market strategies. And I'm really excited to be here today. I think this is a very, very relevant topic. And like Harvey said, hey, a lot of this AI stuff has been transitioning. So I think today's going to be really great. Back over to you, Harvey.
Wonderful. Yeah, thanks very much. Really appreciate you joining us today. And then just one more intro slide for those of you who don't know Marion Square. Really quickly, we're a federal market intelligence and go-to-market advisory services firm that really help technology companies successfully enter and grow within the U.S. government market. Our work focuses on helping clients understand where agencies are investing, which mission priorities are driving demand, and how agencies acquire technology, what partnerships and acquisition pathways provide the fastest route to the contract. Our goal is really to help companies reduce time to contractor revenue, improve win rate, and make going to market in government very efficient and cost effective. So now that we've all been introduced, let's dig into the information here. So Abby, if you go to the next slide, if you would, please. So over the last several years, as we've talked about, we've watched the federal AI conversation really evolve significantly. Initially, much of the discussion centered around understanding the technology itself. Agencies were evaluating the potential benefits, identifying risks, and determining where AI might fit within their missions. Much of the market was focused on experimentation, research, and exploring potential applications. So a lot of RDT&E types of dollars were being spent. The next phase, or what the transition phase, and was really focused on governance, right? This was the last administration. We saw the release of executive orders, OMB guidance, and increasing attention on things like security, oversight, transparency, and risk management. Agencies were working to establish the policies, the governance structures, and the safeguards necessary to support AI adoption across government. And over the last year, however, excuse me, we've really begun to see a shift led by documents like OMB 2521, which focuses on accelerating federal use of AI. I think that signals growing expectation that agencies are moving beyond planning and beginning to identify and implement high value AI use cases. And at the same time, the federal AI use case inventory, I think, has provided unprecedented visibility into where agencies are actively exploring, piloting, and deploying AI capabilities. More recently, really just about a month or so ago, the administration's executive order on promoting advanced artificial intelligence innovation and security reinforced AI as a strategic capability tied not only to innovation, but I think more importantly to national security and American overall competitiveness. Taken together, these developments suggest that the conversation within government is no longer centered on whether agencies should adopt AI. I think increasingly the discussion is focused on how agencies can deploy AI capabilities more quickly, more effectively, and at greater scale to support mission outcomes. Now, the thing to note, while these are all positive signs for AI companies, it doesn't mean every agency is moving at the same pace or that every AI category is receiving funding. The opportunity is not evenly distributed. And you'll see that as we walk through our slides today. Some mission areas are accelerating rather rapidly. Some agencies are emerging as leaders, and some acquisition pathways are proving more effective than others. So I kind of want to start and bring in our panel here today, especially with you, Caitlin, because from a Carosoft perspective, you all, because you're so large, see a lot across the government. And I'm curious, are you seeing this transition in the work that you're doing with agencies, kind of moving from this experimentation to more into real world deployment across government?
Oh, 100%. I mean, with the conversation just a couple of years ago, it was all the pilots, right? It was the exploration, it was the testing, it was the developing. And I think the clearest signals that you're seeing it in procurement language, right?
Mhm.
You're seeing them move out of that experimental pilot kind of phase. You're seeing the government actually tie these to their mission outcomes. You're seeing it tie it
Mhm.
to all their operational needs. You're seeing it every day in the news too, right?
Yeah.
All these different
Yeah.
use cases. And hey, that AI use case inventory is like a gold mine. So it's definitely very interesting. It's definitely interesting to see how quickly it has shifted over the past, I would say, year and a half already.
Mhm.
And I think it's just going to keep gaining momentum over the next couple of years.
Yeah, I attend quite a few industry events. I was at RSA, a bunch of other government events. I do a bunch of industry days, and it's amazing how just a couple of years ago, to your point, Caitlin, folks were talking about exploring AI and hey, we want to kind of see where AI fits. To now, everybody's message is, how can your AI help us? Right? We're deploying AI here, we're deploying AI there. Bring us your AI needs, or bring us your AI ideas, if you will, and how can they help meet our needs or requirements? So, to your point, I think we're definitely seeing a shift, and it's definitely in just about every conversation or industry day or event that I end up attending. So okay, that's good feedback. Thank you. Next slide, if you would, please. So one of the biggest, I think. Oh, first polling question. So one of the biggest misconceptions I think about the federal AI market is that adoption is occurring evenly across government. What we're actually seeing is that certain mission areas are moving much faster than others. Defense and national security organizations, I think, really kind of lead the way, and they continue to explore how AI can improve in areas like decision making, intelligence analysis, and also one of the big areas is autonomous capabilities. Cybersecurity, with the launch of Mythos and other large language models, remains another area of significant interest as agencies look to improve threat detection, automate analysis, and really strengthen defense operations. And then you have areas like scientific research at NIH. Other HHS organizations are really trying to leverage AI to accelerate discovery, simulation, and advanced analytics. And I think just about at the same time, nearly every agency that I'm seeing is exploring how AI can improve in areas like workforce productivity, right? By helping employees find information faster, reduce administrative burden, and really streamline routine processes. Other areas such as healthcare operations, finance management, and we're also seeing a good bit of citizen service are also gaining momentum. But what I think is really important for vendors in this space is really understanding what these high momentum areas have in common. They all have clearly defined missions. They all have measurable outcomes that the agencies are looking for, and they all have leadership willing to invest in new capabilities. And these are the areas we often see where AI starts moving the quickest. So I'll open this up kind of to the panel here and get your all's thoughts on it. But when you look across government today, which of these missionaries do you believe are maybe the furthest along in moving from AI experimentation into operational deployment? Maybe we start with that. John, Caitlin, whichever one, I'll let you all hop in first.
Yeah, since Caitlin just give her a chance to
Yeah.
get a sip of water. They're all moving so fast, and the ones, and you just said, Harvey, the ones that are moving fast is the ones that have the mission problem that's crystal clear. And where that
Yeah.
mission problem is clear, the operational need is urgent, and the value can be measured. All things that you just articulated in what you were saying. The things that I'd point to are probably in defense and national security, cyber operations, intelligent analysis, scientific research, and as you said, the last one, workforce productivity, the areas with the most momentum right now. Where
Mhm.
cyber is a really strong example, agencies aren't really pursuing AI because they want another tool, right? They are pursuing AI because they want because the alert volume is so high
Yep.
and the response windows are shrinking. And that's where they're really starting to see the environment becoming more complex, and the skilled analytical isn't enough. They need to
Yeah.
have something that is real time, that's giving them the value of the faster detection, the faster triage, and the stronger risk visibility. And so, finding out where, what's the outcome we're trying to improve upon is super important. And, what's getting in the way of them solving for that now? And what's the cost of not solving it? How is that going to impact the mission if they don't solve this problem? Are their lives at stake? So what's the mission? What's mission critical, for lack of better ways of saying it?
Yep. No, that's good insight there. Caitlin, you mind opining on this?
Yeah, absolutely. And I agree with everything that you guys just said. I think if I take a step back and maybe look at the entire federal market, I think what stands out isn't always who's leading it, but it's what the leaders have in
Mm-hmm.
common of those that are
Mm-hmm.
implementing it, right? So the agencies that are making the most progress, just beyond evaluating AI as that standalone kind of technology, is they're integrating it within their existing programs. They're
Yeah.
existing it with, with their business processes, with their budgets. And it's really just becoming a part of how they deliver on that mission, not
Mm-hmm.
just like as a separate innovation effort. And that's the pattern I think is most important because whether it's defense, it's healthcare, it's that scientific research, workforce productivity, the organizations making the biggest strides have a clearly defined operational problem. They have that executive sponsorship, right? And a path to sustain the capability right before that initial deployment.
Yeah. No, I agree wholeheartedly with what you're just saying there. So John, maybe a quick follow-up question for you is how important is it for organizations as they start to look at the federal market to really understand the agency's mission, right, when approaching them to discuss their AI capabilities?
Oh, it's critical, Harvey. I mean, when we talk to organizations again across the globe that we work with, understanding what the mission or what their big business challenges are is super critical to understanding how are we going to add value back to this organization. And so if we're just going in and starting to talk about we have an AI solution and this is what we do, that's not enough. It's got to tie
Yep.
back to solving the problem and accomplishing the mission that they're trying to accomplish. If it doesn't do that, then it's noise. And it's a lot, there's a lot of noise around AI in the market right now. And we've
Yeah.
got to eliminate the noise, understand what the mission and the value is that they're going to get from this, be able to measure what success is going to look like. If we can't do those things, then we just sound like everybody else that's out there. Tying it
Yeah.
back, taking those required capabilities and tying them back to the mission outcomes is who's going to win the game.
Yeah, we got some examples of that a little later on in the presentation here that we'll talk about in detail. But I think you're 100% correct. Really, this administration, more than I think any in the past, are really driving agencies to show ROI, to show improved mission outcomes. And so I think to really set yourself apart as a software vendor, you've got to go in and know how you're going to affect those for the organization or the agency because that's what they're really going to be looking at. So Caitlin, real quick question for you here as we look out across, government and those sorts of things. What do you think is really separating some of the organizations that are, or the agencies that are successfully operationalizing AI than those that are still maybe just in the large pilot phase? I mean, as I look at it, I say one of the biggest things outside of as we talked about the agency leadership supporting it, the budgets being set aside, but I also look at it and say, do they have that AI infrastructure in place to be able to support
Yeah.
this? And that, in my mind, is a really critical flag for organizations to look at as they start to approach some of these agencies.
Yeah, absolutely. And from what I've seen across the market, the agencies moving the fastest all have one thing in common. They've built the organization around the technology, not just
Mm,
implemented the technology, right? So they're really leaning into it. And they've moved beyond proving that AI works and started focusing on how to operationalize it at scale.
yep.
And really, that means that there is that strong executive sponsorship, like we mentioned before. There's that clear mission ownership. There's governance. There's security. It's built in from the beginning, not the end. It's
Hmm.
not an afterthought. And there's a plan for, how that capability will be funded, acquired, sustained over time, right?
Yep.
And we've seen plenty of organizations launch successful pilots, and the agencies that move into production are the ones that plan for what comes after the pilot. They knew who would own it, how it's going to integrate into their existing workflows, and how success would be measured once it kind of becomes a part of that day-to-day operation. So to me, the real difference between that experimentation and maybe some of that deployment, it's not just about the sophistication of AI, it's about whether the organization is, prepared to make it a part of how they deliver their mission.
Yeah.
So that foundation is critical to this.
Yeah, I think you're 100% correct there. They're looking at it as how do we integrate it into our operations, not how are we buying a standalone application.
Yep.
So something definitely to keep in mind there.
Yes.
If we would, let's go to the next slide, please. And what I'll do is I'll let everybody know if you've got questions as we go through this, please don't hesitate to hit us up in the chat or on the questions, and we're keeping an eye on that, and we can stop and kind of answer them in line here if that's okay. So one of the questions we hear most often from technology companies is, how do I know, or how do we know where the federal AI market is actually heading? And the answer is that there's really, in my mind, no single source that provides a full or complete picture. There's a few areas you can look at, right? Budgets, I think, tell us where agencies are requesting resources. The federal AI use case inventory, I think, provides visibility into where agencies are actively experimenting and deploying AI. Executive actions and policy directives help us understand where leadership attention is focused or going to be focused. Agency modernization initiatives often reveal operational challenges that agencies are trying to solve through technology investment. Now, individually, I think each of these signals is useful, but to me, the most interesting opportunities emerge when multiple signals begin pointing in the same direction. So, for example, if we see an agency reporting AI use cases, and then we go to the FY27 budget requests that are out now, and we start to see funding requests for the next year. We start to see them releasing roadmaps that are highlighting modernization challenges, and then receiving policy support from leadership. I think that becomes a really strong indicator of a real future opportunity, more than any one signal alone can highlight for vendors. I think for vendors, the goal isn't simply to follow the AI trends, because as we've talked, everybody's talking about AI now. But I think the goal is to really identify where, an agency's mission demand, their executive attention through memorandums and executive orders and roadmaps, and then funding, right, through the budget requests, all of a sudden begin to converge. So from the panel's perspective, I think, Caitlin, we'll start with you on this. When you're evaluating, this federal AI market, which of these signals do you think is most useful in identifying future opportunities for organizations?
So I think you hit the nail on the head that, hey, there's multiple signals. The piece of advice, or what I personally pay the closest attention to, is consistency across multiple indicators. So if, the government, as we know, they produce an incredible amount of information. There's executive orders, there's the budget request, everything that you just went over, and each one tells a part of a story. What gets my attention is when they all begin to start reinforcing the same priority. So for example, if we see AI highlighted in policy, which we have, then the funding requested in the budget, which we have, agencies publishing new AI use cases, which they are every single day, it feels like, once they're released, and all those modernization initiatives, and they're focused on the same challenge. And finally, procurement activity, right? It begins to emerge, which we have started to see already. And that's usually a strong indication we're looking at a sustained investment area rather than a short-term initiative. So really from that market kind of research perspective and everything that we do, that's where the confidence comes from, is that consistency. So we're not relying on a single signal. We're looking at the pattern of the signal.
Yeah, for me, it's really two things. One is the AI use case inventory. And when I first saw that a couple of years ago, I was like, holy cow, look at this. This is great. But then you got to take it and tie it to the funding, right? From my perspective, when you look at that, because if they don't have the AI use case listed, then you got to wonder, are they even thinking about it? But the next piece is, okay, they got a bunch listed there. Are they all funded? Let's look at the budget. So there's a couple key signals that I really like to look at. John, from your perspective, just out of curiosity, with this AI, we're going to talk more about the AI use case inventory coming up here, but in looking at this, how do you think organizations can leverage that use case inventory to assist with their go-to-market?
Yeah, really good. So I think the things that you and Caitlin just talked about, where those four things converge is where the power comes in, right? And that's really the catch there, is making sure you see that consistency that Caitlin was talking about. The thing that I would caution folks on is that when you see those things starting to converge, don't treat that as an invitation to go pitch your AI solution. That is not what we're trying to do. We should treat that as an opportunity to build a hypothesis about the agency's pain and ask more questions before you go and pitch your AI solution. You may be pitching something too soon, too early, without truly understanding what they're trying to accomplish and how they're going to measure success. And so we would ask that you take a step back and really take the time to understand what is the true pain that they feel and do some great discovery before you just go and, again, unload the dump truck of all things you do AI.
Yep. That makes perfect sense, John. Perfect sense. Awesome. Next slide, if you would, please, Abby. So if anyone is doubting, I think, whether the federal AI adoption is real, the interesting thing for me, I've been watching this since it came out, is this AI inventory data, and I think it really provides a really compelling, narrative around AI in government. So if you just kind of look at it, in 2023, agencies reported 710 AI use cases. By 2024, that number had grown to 2,100, which I thought was astronomical and amazing. But the thing that shocked me even more is in 2025, agencies reported over 3,600 use cases. Right, that's more than a five-fold increase in just a couple of years in the number of AI use cases that agencies are reporting. I think what's equally important is that adoption is spreading across government. So in 2023, only 21 agencies reported AI use cases, but by 2025, which is the latest numbers that we have, that number nearly doubled to 41 agencies. And the inventory also shows, I think, increasing maturity. So more than 445 use cases are now classified as high impact, and over 1,800 have moved beyond the concept phase. I think the data is showing that AI is becoming more embedded into mission delivery, operational workflows, and workforce productivity initiatives really across government. And so for vendors, I think that growth, in my opinion, tells us two things. First, demand is expanding rapidly. And second, agencies are becoming more sophisticated buyers because they now have, I think, real world deployment experience with some of these initial use cases they've gone into. So, I'll address this to the panel, but looking at this growth, I think what stands out to you the most? Is it the increase in the number of use cases, the number of participating agencies, or the fact that many of these use cases are now moving from, hey, this is an idea, to now we actually want to deploy it? Caitlin, I know you're tracking this a good bit. Why don't you give us some of your thoughts?
Yeah, I definitely think it's the deployments, but it's the maturity of the deployments that we're seeing too, right?
Yeah.
We really expect every year that the agency activity is going to increase. But I think what really catches my attention with this is that many of those use cases have progressed beyond, the pilot. It's more into that operational kind of deployment. But there's also agencies that are beginning to build portfolios of AI use cases across different mission areas. And really that's a sign of kind of the conversation shifting from isolated projects to more of a broader enterprise adoption. And that's what we're seeing a lot of our customers wanting and asking for. So to me, that's where the market really starts to change, is once the agencies have kind of operational experience, they become more of an informed buyer over time. And they ask better questions, they have clearer requirements. So we're going to see this turn into a much more mature, market, I think, in the next 1 to 2 years.
Yeah, that's great insight. John, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I absolutely do, because it's interesting what's happening. This is moving beyond concept, and now it's, as the market is maturing, and our customers are using AI against us at the same time as sellers. They're learning more and more about what it can and can't do, what they can and can't trust, and how you're going to enter into the room or into the virtual call that you're coming into. They are far more aware today. So our buyers are becoming more mature. The feature-based selling becomes less effective. And so the sophisticated buyer is not impressed with the AI language alone. They've done too much research. They have too much at their fingertips. They need to know how you're going to solve that mission problem. That's the common theme of what we're talking about here today. Seems like we've all used mission and solving the mission problem. We've got to be able to speak that language. If not, again, my little funny phrase I use is we're just unloading the dump truck of stuff. And they're just too educated for us to know, for us to walk in and just feature dump them. They've got to have a perspective on how we're going to solve their problems and reduce their risks.
It's interesting. I had a conversation with some folks at a conference recently where they were talking about the number of proposals now being generated by AI and how they all end up looking exactly the same.
Yeah.
So, as you start to think about responding to an RFP, being able to pattern that or being able to put that clearly in the context of an agency's requirements, I think is what you need to focus on because it's really going to differentiate your proposal. Because again, I think a lot of folks go in, they dump the RFP requirements in, they say generate a response for me, and it becomes very generic. So I think really spending that time to be able to understand the mission outcomes and how you affect those mission outcomes and clearly articulating those is going to be critical for success.
And Harvey, that's if you're lucky enough to get the proposal stage, right? Let's even go
Exactly.
before that into the demo world of, a company I was working with recently, government that I was working, federal agency I was working with recently. They had already piloted AI now for knowledge management,
Mm-hmm.
and so company walked in and did another generic demo.
Yep.
And the generic demo didn't help them understand anything more or less on how it's going to help their workflow, their data security, their auditability, the measurable productivity. They had no insights.
Yep.
And so even before we get the proposal, we've got to be really clear on what we're going to go demo.
Exactly. No, I think that's really good insight there. I think it's you just got to get yourself over and above the what I call the homogenization, if you will, of demos and proposals and that sort of stuff. So no, good insight there, Caitlin and John both. Next slide, if you would, please, Abby. Oh, next polling question.
Harvey, there was also a good question in the chat. If we want to take a minute and answer that while the polling question is going on.
Yeah,
It's
why
really
don't you go ahead and ask if you don't mind?
sure. It's really a two-part question. So, in the private sector, technology is not the limiting factor in AI adoption. It is the people who lack the AI and data knowledge and the skills to use the AI technology. What are the speaker's perspective on the aspect of the AI adoption within the Department of War? And then the second part is additionally, my conversations with AI solution companies indicate they don't believe the Department of War workforce has the AI knowledge and skills to use their solutions. How does this affect AI adoption within the DoW?
Yeah,
Um,
so I'll hop in first because I've actually done some work in the space, right? And I'm a believer that employee training and enablement is going to be a critical driver to the mass adoption of AI in the workplace. And so as we counsel companies and talk to AI companies, we always make sure that they have a training program or some sort of program to offer to those agencies. Because this is not, your old SaaS model where you log in, click a button, and you just start using the application, right? I think if you really want to drive adoption, I think if you really want to be integrated into the operations of an agency, which makes your solution sticky, you've got to have a good enablement program that goes right along with it. And if you skip that, I think you're missing a big opportunity. I'll pause and Caitlin, John, I'll let either one of you hop in on that.
so a big trend that I've been seeing just across the board with the federal government is that they actually do lack the technology workers or the workforce, the understanding. So to the person who asked the question, you're absolutely right. I think there's a little bit of smoke and mirrors that the government is, hey, they're ready for this or that they understand it fully. They let go, I think it was like 40,000 technology workers, and they've only hired back 10 so far. But then something was released today that, hey, they're going to hire back about 600 more technology workers. They're trying to make themselves more competitive. The government has been trying to do that for years and years and years. So exactly to what Harvey just said, the training, the enablement is going to be critical. And that's also a great way to sell your product, right? Leading
Yep.
with that as a capability so that, hey, they understand your solution and it shows that, hey, you understand what their challenge is. So definitely lack of knowledge is a challenge and something that you can also sell against.
Yeah. John, you got any thoughts?
Yeah, and I see this both on the public and private sector. I think there's a lot of, and I'll use Caitlin's words, smoke and mirrors that exist out there with AI right now. It's changing so rapidly, and there's shadow AI happening in every organization. And the lack of knowledge that sits and the enablement that needs to happen in order to make sure the teams are clear on what we can and can't do and how our organization is going to leverage this moving forward. There's a lot of unknown that's out there right now, and I think we saw that reflected this week in what happened with the stock market, and saw some of the AI companies and the drop in stock because of exactly what we're talking about. That is, it was what we say it is. Is it going to do what we think it's going to do? And so there's a lot of questions that are out there right now, and that's why the feature and function piece of this becomes less important. But how is it going to solve the problem? How is it going to solve the mission that they're trying to accomplish? And it can't be any louder than it has been this week. There's a lot of feature and function that's out there that get the Department of War, executives, you name it, that are confused on what is this really going to do for us. We have to be able to answer that question.
Yeah, no, I agree. I agree. So let's kind of shift gears. We talked about the use case and the prevalence of that. But one of the things I think is really important, and one of the questions, many technology companies ask is whether, the growth we're seeing in the AI use cases is actually translating into actual spending. And I think, again, that's a really important question because agencies can publish strategies, issue policy guidance, and report use cases. But ultimately, vendors need to understand whether those activities are leading to funded opportunities. The AI inventory suggests that adoption is expanding rapidly across government. But what makes this environment, I think, more compelling for vendors is that we're also seeing evidence that funding is beginning to follow adoption. A good example comes from the Department of War. According to a recent Brookings Institute analysis, the potential value of AI-related contract activity increased from roughly $269 million in 2022 to approximately $4.3 billion in 2024. So that's really a dramatic increase, and I think suggests that AI is moving, beyond research projects and pilot programs into really large operational initiatives. Again, I think it's important to realize that not every use case receives funding, and not every agency is investing at the same space. But when we step back, I think, and look at the broader trends, we see two things happening simultaneously. First, agencies are identifying more opportunities to apply AI. And second, agencies are beginning to allocate more resources towards deploying those capabilities. For vendors, I think that's a critical distinction, right? The market isn't simply growing because agencies are interested in AI. The market is growing because agencies they increasingly believe AI can help them solve mission problems, improve operational efficiencies, and really strengthen national security capabilities. So I think the real question now becomes where is that funding likely to concentrate moving forward? And so if the panel, if you're a commercial AI company and you're really wanting to get into the space, or you're an AI company in this space, should you be chasing the largest AI budgets? Should you be focusing on agencies that have, the strongest operational demand? Kind of what's your thought there in targeting as we start to look at this market as a whole? John, you want to go first?
Sure, I'll go first. Yeah. So if it were me, I would not be chasing budget alone. Large budgets matter, but budget without a mission fit, urgency, stakeholder ownership, and acquisition access is a waste of time. And so I'd be really careful just chasing after the big budget. The better approach is look to where those signals converge, right? As we were talking about before. Is there a real mission problem? Is there a visible agency activity that's taking place? Is there funding or procurement movement that's taking place? Is there an executive or program owner? Is there a realistic contract path? Can the vendor prove value in that environment that exists? Is it right for you? Does it fit your customer profile that you have? The agencies showing the strongest operational demand may be better targets than the agencies with the largest top line budgets. And so I would be looking at where do those signals converge and the things that I just listed off. Caitlin, if you've got some other perspectives there, please share.
I think the only adjective or word I would add on there is momentum. Look for the momentum, right?
Yeah.
And you're absolutely right. To me, every time I see a large budget, I'm like, ooh, great. But I also know that that's going to attract the most competition, right? Everyone's going to swarm around it. So looking for, like you just said, like that operational demand, it's think of all of the like high impact service providers. Think of IRS, think of Social Security Administration. It's everybody who has those high caseloads, like they need help because they're in a data silo and they're all across the United States. And the government, the federal government's trying to centralize everything so everyone has access to the same information. The systems are reporting back to each other. Um, so there's a lot, I think, out there around the operational need, the demand, outside of just the budget that we're seeing. Because once that momentum is created, the budget's going to follow.
Yeah. No, those are all good points. And the other thing I always like to tell folks when you look at the budget is you also need to look at what is that budget for, right? Because in some instances you see a budget and then next to it you see 55 FTEs. And you're like, they're not buying any technology. They're buying a whole bunch, or they're bringing a whole bunch of new hires in. So it's really important to understand when that big budget is there, what that big budget is made up of as well, and not just chase again, the large number there. Next slide, if you would, please, Abby. Oh, one more polling question here. So I think this is important. The next couple of slides, I think, are really important for organizations. I think we've kind of shown there's use cases, right? Agencies are thinking about, there's funding being spent, there's demand. Now we kind of want to talk about, okay, how do you position yourself here? And I think, again, this is the crux of the presentation or what we want to talk about to the vendors. So as we work with, or Marion Square works with technology companies entering the federal market, one of the most common challenges we see, and we've talked about this, is a disconnect between how vendors describe their capabilities and how agencies define their requirements. So technology companies naturally focus on the technology itself, right? They talk about generative AI, large language models, co-pilots, autonomous agents. But government buyers, I think, rarely start with technology. They start with mission problems. So think problems like improving decision-making, accelerating investigations, improving operational efficiencies, maybe achieving mission objectives with limited sets of resources. The agencies that are successfully deploying AI generally aren't pursuing AI as a standalone initiative, right? They're applying AI to specific mission challenges where the value can be measured and justified, right? For vendors, this often, I think, requires a shift in positioning, right? The conversation needs to move from what the technology does to what outcomes it enables. And before I kind of hop in and ask some questions, I actually have, Abby, if you go to the next slide, a real life example of this. I was doing a no, next slide, please, Abby. Yes, I was doing a CBP industry day just a couple weeks ago, and this was one of the slides that the Office of Information Technology and the CTO set up. And if you read the top bullet there, it says everyone is pitching AI products and tools. What we want is industry to tell us how they can integrate AI to help OIT solve legacy problems, increase employee productivity, and support the mission in a 24/7 by 365 environment while ensuring the highest level of security and confidentiality for CBP systems. So, I also attended a VA industry day, which pretty much said the exact same thing. Don't come in and tell us about your tech and how it works. Tell us the outcomes that you're going to be driving with this tech. Tell us how you're going to improve our missions. So I know John and Caitlin, John, particularly with force management and some of the work you do, I think this is kind of right up your alley. So maybe I'll pause and give you a minute to talk a little bit about, what this means, leading with outcomes, and your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I'd love to. And if you could go back to the previous slide, that would be great, because I think reorder those a little bit. So this is Harvey, to your point, this is a big part of what we do. We help teams create more effective value-based conversations. And that starts with asking better questions, right? We've got to become more effective at asking questions and let the curiosity, as I like to say, the little kid in us stay alive, asking the why, asking and understanding what's going on within the departments we're calling on. What is the agency trying to accomplish? What's happening today? What needs to change? How will success be measured? What proof is required for technical and financial and mission stakeholders to move forward? When sellers can uncover those kind of answers, they are far better equipped to shape requirements and differentiate from a very crowded market. Everybody's talking about AI. Everybody. We work with hundreds of companies around the globe, and everybody's talking about AI. So to differentiate in a crowded market, you've got to be able to ask those questions and then present the solution in a way that is tied to a buyer's priorities. Like, what is most important to them? What's the mission they're trying to accomplish for? And this is where we help, right? We give the team some practical frameworks to align messaging to improve their discovery capabilities and be able to articulate measurable value to execute more consistently across the very complex federal sales process. Because in today's world, a feature is not enough. A benefit is a little bit better, but the value that's going to solve for the mission is where it matters. And that's really what we're trying to drive to.
Yep, those are good points. Caitlin, you got any thoughts on that?
You guys are doing such a good job of covering everything.
Okay. No, that's great. No, look, I can't emphasize it enough, right? I mean, and it's one thing to have myself, John, Caitlin sort of say, hey, you have to understand how you improve the mission outcomes and where you fit and those sorts of things. But to have the government sort of put that up in industry days and actually they're telling you this is how you need to approach us, really, I think should make organizations pause, look at what they're doing, and make sure they're aligning with those government requests. If you would, next slide, please, Abby. So as we've seen, as we've discussed, AI adoption, I think, is expanding rapidly across government. We're seeing activity across a broad range of areas. What's important to understand, or what's important, however, is not simply identifying which agencies are investing. The more important question, again, is to understand why they're investing. And I think one of the biggest mistakes vendors make is assuming because multiple agencies are pursuing AI, they're all pursuing it for the same reasons. So you really have to break this down and, again, understand the mission. So the Department of War, for example, I think if you look at it at a high level, they're focused on things like decision advantage, operational effectiveness, intelligent analysis, and really, really autonomy. DHS, for example, is focused on border security, threat detection, operational awareness. But then you look at an agency like HHS, and they're really focused on research acceleration, healthcare outcomes, and fraud detection. And so, the technology, right, that you're pitching may look similar on the surface. Like we have an LLM, we have a chatbot, we have a this, but the mission drivers, the budget owners, the success metric, and really acquisition strategies, right, can become really different based upon those agencies. I think this can become even more important when you're looking at broader government priorities, right? So the administration's recent executive order on promoting advanced artificial intelligence innovation and security, I think, reinforces AI as a strategic capability tied to national security, cybersecurity, critical infrastructure protection, and then I think real importantly, American competitiveness. And I think that helps explain why organizations focused on national security or agencies focused on national security and cyber missions continue to receive significant attention and investment. I think at the same time, we're seeing strong momentum across civilian agencies as leaders look to improve service delivery, workforce productivity, accelerate research, and I think strengthen program integrity. So for vendors, I think the key isn't simply identifying agencies investing in AI, as we've been talking about. I think the key is understanding what's driving those investments. Because ultimately, again, AI, agencies don't fund AI initiatives. Really, they're funding mission outcomes. And I think the vendors that really understand mission priorities, really understand strategic objectives, business drivers behind the agency's AI investment, will be far better positioned than those focusing solely on technology. So again, I'll kind of bring the panel in here and John, Caitlin, how important is it for vendors? And we've talked about it, but maybe expand on a little bit. How important is it for vendors to really understand what's driving AI adoption within the agency, rather than simply just to knowing, hey, we're looking for AI because we have a big budget here for AI, or we've called out a big budget for AI.
Yeah, I can take this one first. Give you a chance to rush, John. So I think understanding the why an agency is investing is far more valuable than simply knowing that they're investing. One thing that we've seen across the market is that similar AI investments can be funded, justified, and measured in completely different ways depending on the agency. So for example, an AI capability supporting, let's say, document analysis could be funded as a part of a cybersecurity initiative at one agency, a workforce modernization effort at another, or a customer experience initiative, kind of somewhere else. The technology may look identical, but stakeholders, the funding sources, and definition of success are completely different at every single agency. So it's very critical to have different messaging for every single agency and every single need. Don't just have a federal AI messaging across the board. And that's really why I think the context of understanding your customers matters so much. Because once you understand what's driving the investment, you can usually understand who owns it, how it's likely to be acquired, and how that opportunity will kind of evolve over time.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
Really good, Caitlin. A couple things, and I'll just kind of rewind this a little bit. That I'm going to focus on a little different area, and that's around discovery, right? Like really trying to move beyond the simple questions of, are you interested in AI, or what capabilities are you looking for? We got to start digging deeper than that and start understanding how certain processes are being handled today. Where does the current approach create delays, risk, costs, things of that nature? What happens if nothing changes over the next 12 months? What outcome is leadership expecting? And we start asking different questions. We start learning more about what the real capability needs to be. And to Caitlin's point, the messaging has to start with the agency's mission. And each agency has their own unique mission. We can't walk in and just talk about our technology. They don't care. I don't mean to be crass, but they just don't care. They want to know how it's going to solve their problems. So, a message might sound something along the lines of this, like, are you trying to improve your mission outcome today? Today, this process creating delays and risk, cost, and capacity constraints. To change that, you need these required capabilities. Here's where we can help, and here's the proof of where we've done it before. It changes the messaging versus my phrase, unloading the dump truck of all the stuff that we can do.
Yeah, and I think, just to add there, back to the earlier question around how enabled are agencies to think about AI. John, going in as an organization and asking those questions up front, getting the organization or the agency to think about those answers, I think does two things. One, it positions you not as a software vendor trying to hawk software. It positions you as an advisor, if you will. Hey, we understand the space. Let's talk to you about some questions and what you're trying to get accomplished here. And then I think what that directly relates to is you getting to help set the stage for the RFP that comes out, right? I didn't just go in and tell you what my software is. I went in and I spent the first time understanding what your objectives are, what your needs are, what your requirements are. I helped you think about that because you may not know those things.
That's
and then
exactly
I helped
right.
you, that helps, and then I think put information in detail into the overall RFP that may come out. So it's a great way, I think, to think about that and set yourself up for, the inside track going forward.
Yeah, absolutely. Trying to influence that RFP so it favors you and disfavors your competitors, especially before quiet time. None of us like getting that RFP that is either blind or we had no influence over. We have zero to little chance to winning that.
Exactly. Yep. So I know we're running short here. Let's hop to the next slide, and I want to go to this slide because there was a question in there about data infrastructure that popped up, and like, where do you go to understand or let organizations or agencies that have data infrastructure? So what I would say, and how I always like to think about this market, is not every agency is at the same level of maturity. Some agencies have their data in place, their infrastructure is all lined up. and they're deploying AI at scale or looking to deploy AI at scale across the organization, right? We want to embed it into our systems, we want to embed it into our workflows. We have the data, we're ready to go. There are other agencies out there that are clearly saying, hey, we need help with the data. We're trying to put the infrastructure in place. The best place to look for that is in the budgets, right? The FY27 budgets, the requests are out. If you need help looking through them, give us a call. We can chat with you about it. But that is the best place or the best signal, I think, to start to look, one. And then two, any of the agency roadmaps that are out there, that's another great place to look. If you start to think about, hey, we're in the infrastructure, the data space, where do we need to go? I think those are a couple key areas to start to look. Caitlin, I know you do a lot of research too. I'd be curious as to your thoughts on that.
Yeah, I think when it comes to this, it's kind of looking at maybe some of the behavioral kind of signals. A little bit of like a checklist of what I kind of like to look at is, are they publishing multiple AI use cases across different mission areas? Are they standing up that AI governance kind of structure? Um, do they have a chief AI officer? Do they have a CDO in place, right?
Yeah,
And then, hey, how are they kind of releasing maybe some of those RFIs, moving things into production, or really just kind of, standardizing AI across, multiple organizations? So there's a couple of factors that need to go into this as you're kind of developing the plan, looking at that infrastructure, looking at how mature that infrastructure is, and I think you guys can help them with that.
awesome. Great. Well, let's jump here to the last slide, sort of the wrap up, and as we wrap up the discussion today, I think there are four practical takeaways for vendors looking to really grow in the AI market space. Right, first, you identify agencies where AI is clearly becoming a priority. So look at things like use case inventory, budget requests, executive sponsorships, mission alignments. Second, understand where the agency sits in its AI maturity journey. Agencies building foundational data capabilities, I think, require a totally different approach than agencies deploying AI operationally. Third, and I think we've hit this, and it's really critical, align your message to mission outcomes, right? The most successful vendors aren't leading with models or algorithms or terminology. They're leading with things like mission effectiveness, operational efficiency, workforce productivity, right? Measurable results. And then I think finally, understand how the agency intends to buy. So success depends on as much an acquisition strategy and partnership and contract access as it does to technology, right? I think those organizations that combine these four elements, agency priority, maturity, outcomes, and acquisition strategy, are going to be far better positioned than those that simply assume, this growing AI use case and the budgets are going to automatically lead to business. So I don't know if we've got any additional questions here. I think we've answered most of those. So maybe I'll give it one more final round before I turn it back over to Sydney and team. Any other questions, please reach out. Okay, Sydney, we'll turn it back over to you.
Perfect. Thank you. Thank you for joining us today, and a special thank you to Harvey, John, and Caitlin for sharing their insights and expertise. We hope this webinar has been informative and valuable for you and your organization. If you have any additional questions or would like more information, please feel free to reach out to any of our speakers today. Their contact information is currently displayed on your screen. Keep an eye out for an email providing access to the recording from today's webinar, along with some additional resources. Thank you again, and enjoy your weekend, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.